cross, idolatry, Chanuka, enjoy.
All right. So what I wanted to start with actually was focusing a bit on the idea of the cross and how we understand it. And the reason why I wanted to do that was because in the past 2 weeks, in the previous 2 classes, it's definitely come up again and again and again in all different fashions. And we've never really just focused on it. There are many laws which it relates to, but in each one you have to apply, oh, and here's how the cross applies in that situation. So I thought, let me just go through it all with a focus on the cross instead of focusing on the laws and then applying it to the cross. So it should be very, very, very clear, because some people in the class maybe are extra stringent, which is totally fine. But I want it to be clear what's the law as versus extra stringencies. So as someone was saying that in her own home, she does not allow anyone to come in wearing a cross. That's totally obviously allowed to make such a rule. You're allowed to decide that I'm tolerating this object. I want the object out of view. I don't want the object in my house at all. But all of that is your personal decision, your personal prerogative, and maybe it's an expression of your own piety or your own relationship to this in the past. But I want to focus on the laws. Because, of course, we all have to follow the laws. We could go beyond the law if we want to, but we all have to understand what are the laws. So in terms of the cross, there are 2 laws, or there are many laws. There are 2 categories which have very different laws. One is a plain cross, and one is a cross with a figure of a man on it. And we're talking about the cross here. We're not talking about a picture. We're not talking about a painting. We're not talking about a photograph. We are talking about a 3-dimensional object. A 3-dimensional object, a plain cross. A 3-dimensional object, a cross with a figure of the man on it. If we're looking at the cross with a figure of a man on it, it is forbidden. It is forbidden to have any benefit from this cross unless it is nullified. We're going to discuss today what we mean by nullified, basically meaning the owner has done something to express his disregard for this. Like, for example, one way of nullifying an object is breaking it. Then you show obviously you don't respect it, and obviously you're not viewing it as an idol. So if the owner, you say, well, what do I care? Once it's, well, maybe it's valuable, maybe it's gold, maybe it's diamonds. So if there's a solid, thick golden cross with a figure of a man on it, it's idolatrous. It's forbidden. But if the owner, only has to be done by the owner or at the request of the owner. If the owner broke it, smashed it, well, now it's just shards of gold, then you can benefit from it. But as long as it's intact, it is an idolatrous image. It's a 3-dimensional figure of something that is currently worshipped today as an idol. And it doesn't make a difference if no one ever used it for worship. Meaning, it sat in a jewelry store. It was bought by someone who wore it because they thought it was pretty. It's gold, platinum, rose gold, beads, diamonds, rubies. It's a beautiful thing, they thought. They didn't serve it. They didn't worship it. Doesn't make a difference. Since that is a known idol, it's a known idolatry in the world today, it's irrelevant how that specific piece was ever used. It is considered an idol, and it has to be nullified, basically broken, for you to have any benefit from it. And if it's not nullified, it's absolutely forbidden. Now, there's a verse in Deuteronomy, do not bring an abomination into your home, which maybe was what Dixie was thinking of in terms of not allowing the cross in her home. That's not literally what the verse means. I mean, it is what it literally means, but it's not actually the literal law of that verse. When it says, do not bring an abomination into your home in that context means into your possession. So if you came across an idol, you have to destroy it. You have to nullify it before there could be any use from it. But again, nullification is only possible if you're actually the owner of it or if the owner asked you to. Otherwise, you don't have the ability to nullify it, and your only option is to destroy it. So if it's someone else's and you have the ability to destroy it, you can destroy it. You can't benefit from it at all. But if it's yours, or if the owner tells you to, then you could break it and then have benefit from it because you nullified it. The owner or someone, an agent of the owner, said, yes, I want this nullified. I don't want this to be idolatrous anymore. That is the basic perspective on a cross with a man on it. Let's say you happen to encounter this. Like again, Dixie was talking about, you're in a room and there's crosses there, things like that. If you happen to encounter such an object, three-dimensional figure of a cross with a man on it, you don't have to make a detour to avoid it. Just don't really look at it. Don't gaze at it intently. And obviously have no intention to benefit from it. But if you're just passing it, not wanting it, not looking at it, again, it doesn't mean you have to walk with closed eyes, but you're not really focusing on it and obviously have no benefit from it, then you can walk by it. You can sit in a room with it. It might be uncomfortable, but according to the law, it's not forbidden. Obviously, if your chair was positioned in such a way that you're facing it, you would move your chair because it's pretty hard to face it and not look at it. And obviously, you're going to be in the chair probably for like an hour or two, so it's not appropriate. But you could just move your chair so you're not directly facing it. You could be in the room. You might not want to be in the room. You could have a personal stringency you've taken on yourself not to be in the room. That's fine. That's pious. But the letter of the law does not require that. As long as you're not gazing at it, as long as you're not looking at it, as long as you're not benefiting from it, you can be by it. What if you know someone else has one? Can you steal it from them to rid them of an idol? Because if you ask, they wouldn't allow. So you're not supposed to take away or steal things, including people's idols. Even though you're taking it only to destroy it, you can't nullify it because that you need permission for, but you could destroy it. And of course, it's very virtuous to destroy idols, but you can't steal an idol to destroy it. That's not virtuous. And the reason why is because basically, if you did so, there probably would be friction, strife, argumentation, and we're not supposed to create situations like that. Okay, so that's all regarding a cross with a figure of the man on it. Let's say it was a plain cross, no figure of a person. That has a very different perspective in law. Meaning, if the cross has a figure of a man on it and it's three-dimensional, it is clearly viewed as an idol, regardless if someone has worshipped it in the past, is currently worshiping it, has any plans to worship it, or if it was never worshipped. Irrelevant. This is viewed as an idol across the world, and therefore its personal history is not relevant. It is a statue of an idol. Destroy it. If you happen to be the owner of it, like you inherited it, nullify it by destroying it, and then you can benefit from it. If it has any value, the shards, like if you can melt the metals to something of value. If you're not the owner of it, you cannot nullify it and have benefit from it, but destroy it. There's an injunction to destroy idols. That's all with a man. If it's a plain cross without a figure of a person, then we look at it very differently. And here now, it really depends on how was it used. If it was used as an icon, meaning it was worshipped, or it was used as an aid in idol worship, then it is exactly the same like the cross with a figure. It's considered an idol, and it has to be destroyed. And if you're the owner of it, you can nullify it and then benefit. If you're not the owner and you have the ability to destroy it, you destroy it and can have no benefit from it. It is an idol because it was worshipped or it was used as an aid in idol worship. And obviously there are many more religious people that own plain crosses that do one way or another worship with them, pray with them, worship with them, that it would then be considered part of idolatry. But here, the plain cross, used only for decoration, it's a piece of jewelry, not a piece of jewelry that someone used in prayer. It's not a piece of jewelry that someone kisses to evoke whatever. It is just a piece of jewelry, no more and no less than a piece of jewelry. Maybe it's historical, maybe they inherited it from someone. It's just a piece of jewelry. Then it's permissible and it is not viewed as an idol. Now, obviously, even though this is a piece of jewelry, it does not have a figure on it, it is not viewed as an idol, but obviously we're still not very comfortable with it. It's like we'll say too close for comfort. It's obviously not something you would want. If someone gave you one, you obviously are not going to start wearing it. But if someone gave you a cross, plain cross, that was never used for worship, the previous owner wasn't religious at all. They got it from a jewelry store. It was made as a piece of jewelry. It was worn by someone not religious. It somehow was then gifted to you. So it was never used for worship. Well, you're not going to wear it. You can benefit from it because it's not viewed as an idol because it was never used in an idolatrous service. So therefore you could melt it down. You could use the value of it. You could do something of value. You could benefit from it in some way because it was never used as an. Conversely, if you inherited a cross that was owned by a religious worshiper, and you're pretty sure this cross too, even though it's a jewelry, was also used as part of worship, well, then it's just like the previous situation where if you're not the owner, you nullify it and can benefit. If you're not the owner, you destroy it. It is used as an idol. If someone wants to go beyond the law, they want to show God that you're totally separated from this idolatrous belief system, and you want to have no connection with it, that's considered pious. That's considered good. That's considered admirable. But it is totally 100% not required by the law. So what I just did was actually pull together a lot of different laws that relate to this to make this very clear, because I know it is actually relevant, is actually something that you might encounter, and I wanted it to be really, really, really clear. Any questions on this?
I just want to say thank you for talking about this. I'm learning a lot.
Why is mine?
I appreciate it.
I'm so glad, because as I said, I know this is something that it might actually realistically happen in your life.
Yeah.
Some situation along these lines. So that's why I felt we kept on touching on it in the classes. I felt let's just focus on it for a few minutes and really have a foundational understanding. So what we're going to do now is we're going to continue with a few more laws. And actually the laws we're discussing really focus on this idea of nullifying an idol. So it might be clearer. I use that term a number of times in discussing the crosses. So you can really see what we mean by nullifying an idol, which in this case perhaps would be that cross if it has a figure of man on it, or a plain cross that's three-dimensional and was used, as well as some other laws. And then, if we have time, I did want to touch on some ideas, some thoughts of Hanukkah that could be relevant. So we're discussing now in a chapter, and I'm not doing all the laws of the chapter, I just selected a few, about the idea of destroying, eliminating idolatry, and the prohibition for benefiting from idolatry, which is, of course, why it has to be destroyed, or if you're the owner, nullified. Whenever there's a situation of an idol that you have the ability to destroy, you must destroy it. We have an obligation, I'm saying you, it applies to me the same. In some of these laws, there's differences between Jews and non-Jews, that Jews have a little more stringency, but everything I'm saying to you applies to every Jew equally. If there's any situation where we have an ability to destroy an idol, we destroy it. If it's in our ability, because any idol is an abomination to God. Any idol is something that's a defiance, a direct defiance of God. Of course, anytime you do something God doesn't want, it's a defiance. And if you gossip, it's a defiance. And if you steal, it's a defiance. And if you curse, it's a defiance. But idolatry is a direct defiance. It's saying there's a different deity or there's an additional deity. And that's why it is the most severe issue. And that's why there's so many laws circling around this topic of idolatry and how strong we have to be in taking our stance against it. Now, it doesn't mean though, for example, if this was a Noahide nation and there's another nation that's idolatrous, there's no law that says that Noahide nation has to go and wage a war with the idolatrous nation to have power over them and destroy their idols. God's not asking us to do that, which of course you could say, well, that's not really relevant because I don't know of any Noahide nation. But the concept is relevant. What the concept is telling you is you don't have an obligation to go out of your way in ways that are not really so feasible to try to find and destroy idols. It's more like if it comes across your path, if you're in a situation where you have the ability to destroy an idol, then you have to do so. As I said before, in terms of the cross, if you went into I remember someone saying, I think it was not actually in this class, it was in a different class, and she was saying how her maybe her nail salon, she realized that they're worshiping Buddha there, and they have like a little idol and some food, and she was like, some little donuts all put out for the Buddha. She was like, oh my gosh, like, whoa, this is truly idolatrous. But it doesn't mean it's not hers. She's in someone else's store. She's not supposed to just smash it and then like run away. You don't have that obligation. It's not yours. You're, again, if someone, as we said, if someone would steal an idol to destroy it, we're not looking for you to do that. It could create a lot of conflict. If you did it, you don't get punished for it. If you did destroy someone's idol, you don't owe them any money for it. But we're not telling you to go and steal idols to destroy them, or if you happen to notice an idol, grab it and run and destroy it. When you can destroy a situation was like it was put in your way. It's in a hotel room where you are. You know what I'm saying? Something that it's in your authority, under your domain, that there's something you can do about it. Someone sent it to you in the mail in such a situation where you have a relationship to it personally. But if it's someone else's, basically just keep moving. Obviously, when we say idolatry, anything that relates to the service is all idolatrous. Not to go into details, but obviously you know better than me, in the Catholic Church, there are many various items that are all surrounding the service. All of those would fall under the same category. It wouldn't be, well, that's not really an idol. That's really just something they do as a rite of service. No, there's no such thing. Anything that's connected to the service is idolatrous. If the service is idolatrous, everything connected to the service is idolatrous, and it's all treated the exact same way, which would again mean if you bought a house and you found it was in the closet in the basement or in the attic, okay, it's not yours, but at the same time, at this point, it's no one else's. So you definitely are supposed to destroy every single thing there. You have the ability here to destroy the idols, whatever they are, if they're connected to this service. Now, as I said, when the verse says you shall not bring an abomination to your house, it doesn't literally mean your house. It means your possession. So anything that's in your possession that's idolatrous, that's related to any service of an idol, you have the ability, because it's in your possession, and the obligation, because it's an idol, and anything related to idolatrous service falls under the idol category, to destroy it. Grind it up, smash it down, completely destroy it. As I mentioned before, when we were discussing the cross, there's a concept of destroying an idol. There's a concept of nullifying an idol. Well, if you're looking, the two might look exactly the same. Might be doing the same thing, smashing it. But there's a very different ramification. Destroying an idol is an idol that's not yours, but you now have an ability to destroy. So you smash it, you burn it, you shred it, you grind it. You do something that there's absolutely no way anyone that would afterwards come across this could use it as service. That's what it means, destroy. Destroy means I so break it apart that no one could later worship anything from this. It's ground to the dust. It is destroyed. And I can have no benefit from an idol. I can have no benefit after it's destroyed. It's an idol. But nullifying an idol actually means destroying it to the degree that it's no longer considered an idol. If it's no longer considered an idol, I can benefit from it. So as I was saying, if you have a gold three-dimensional cross, plain cross that you assume was worshipped, or cross with a figure of the man that's an idol if it was or wasn't worshipped, and you're the owner of it. Someone gave it to you as a gift. Someone gave it to you as part of an inheritance. You are the owner of it. You have the ability to nullify this. Nullify means you destroy it. But since the destruction shows there's no respect for this there's no respect for this. So obviously we don't worship. I mean, if we worship something, we respect it. If we smash it to pieces, obviously we don't respect it. So obviously we removed it from its stature as an idol. At that point, if you're the owner or if you're an agent of the owner, meaning if someone you know, like let's say a relative, you spoke to a relative of yours and you spoke to them about idolatry, and obviously this is over a series of many conversations, and I don't know if you'll have this conversation, or a very good friend that you could talk to, and you spoke to them about idolatry, you spoke how this is going against God. This is the will. At any time we do anything like this, how it's almost like spitting God in the face. And if we really love God and want a relationship with God, we don't want any intermediaries like this, whatever. You really, really explained it to the degree that you could then say, you know, this item you have, this item you have, this item you have, those are considered idols. No, they're not idols. Those are considered idols. They're part of idolatrous worship. And you know, the really good thing you could do now is you could destroy it. And that's really a good thing for God. And they're like, I can't, but can I do it for you? Yeah, you do it for me. Great. So now you're the agent of the owner. The owner is giving you permission to do it. And then when you do it, it's nullified because it's as if the owner did it themselves. So again, anytime you have an ability to destroy an idol, you destroy it. If you happen to own the idol, your destruction is nullification. Only the owner can nullify. And if it's nullified, then whatever, the shards that are there, if they have any value, you can use them because they're no longer considered idols because you nullified it by your destruction of it. But if you're not the owner, you don't have the ability to nullify it, but you, of course, still have that same exact obligation to destroy it. Now, a statue, something that is made as an actual idol by a non-Jew, is forbidden as soon as it is made. As soon as it comes out of the, wherever it's made in, the smelting iron, the potter's pot. As soon as the idol, this three-dimensional statue or any other form, any three-dimensional form, if this is made as an idol, fresh off the press, it's an idol. Well, no one even worshipped it. It's not even painted yet. It's not on the store shelf yet. Nobody bought it. It's not in any place of worship yet. It doesn't make a difference. The second it is made, it is an idol. And again, if you have any ability, your obligation is to destroy it. If you have to be the owner of it, your obligation is to nullify it. It is forbidden. It has to be destroyed. It has to be nullified. Objects that are prepared to be used to serve an idol, like those little donuts that woman saw in her nail salon, or to beautify the idol, like a wreath of flowers that someone's going to put over a statue. They are forbidden when they are used for that purpose. So the statue, again, what I mean by statue here is a three-dimensional idol. Is forbidden as soon as it's made. Something used as an auxiliary to that statue is forbidden when it is used in the service. And again, once it's used in the service, that wreath of flowers, that donut, you have an ability, you destroy it. You own it, you nullify it. You can't do either of the two. Try not to look at it. Try to avoid eye contact with it because there's an evil there and that evil affects. And that's why we don't really look at it because we don't want to absorb that negative energy and we don't want to get harmed by that negative energy. We don't want to become nullified to that negative energy. And it's a very, very powerful energy. And therefore, we don't look at it. Now, if someone is making an idol for someone else, obviously that's completely forbidden. But if he did so and he actually sold it, he would be allowed to keep the money. But if he has the ability, like if a person was coerced to make an idol for someone, it was like forced to, which might not seem plausible now, or maybe it does, depending on where you live. Definitely in previous generations, it actually was very plausible that someone could coerce a very talented craftsman to make an idol for him. They're coerced. They totally don't want to do it. But if they actually did it because they had no choice and they received money for it, they're allowed to keep the money. There's actually a very famous story with the parents of one of the greatest sages of all time. You might have heard of him. He's referred to by his acronym, which is Rashi. Anyone here has heard of Rashi? Okay, only one. All right. Rashi is one of the greatest commentators, both on the Torah and on the Talmud. He is the most foundational commentary on the Torah, on the 5 books, and he's the most foundational commentator on the Talmud, the entire Talmud. He was born to his parents who were childless and quite old. What's the backstory behind his birth? His father was a gem merchant, and his father happened to come across a fabulous, fabulous stone. I think it was a diamond, whatever it was an incredible stone, incredible stone. And the church found out about it and they wanted to buy it from him for an astronomical sum of money. They weren't stealing it. It was worth an astronomical sum of money and they were going to buy it for an astronomical sum of money. Now, this man knew that obviously it was going to be used for an idol, for a statue. It was amazingly beautiful stone. He didn't know what to do. If he refused to sell it to them, I mean, in those days, they would take out their anger on all the Jews. They probably would make a pogrom and butcher all the Jews and then steal it, you know. So he knew he couldn't refuse to sell it to them. The church had absolute power in those days. It was stronger than the monarchy. So he couldn't refuse to sell it. But how could he sell it? Now, again, technically, according to the letter of the law, in that situation, he probably had no choice because he was totally coerced. And if he sold it to them and then they use it for an idol, I mean, what could he do about it? And he was totally allowed to keep the money. And it was a tremendous amount of money. It was worth a tremendous amount of money. But he was very, very, very pious. He was clever. So he said to the agents of the church that came to buy this stone for an astronomical sum, he said, you know, this is such a precious, precious, valuable thing. I don't want to just entrust it to you. Who knows what's going to happen on the trip? I want to personally take care of it and guard it until it gets to Rome, until it gets to the Vatican. They're like, okay, sure. Yeah. More honor to you. And so he did this because he understood from where he lived to get to the Vatican, they were going to go by boat. And he started, and, you know, of course, they were a little suspicious of him, but not just a little bit cautious of this Jew that's being so nice to them. And so every day he started like going on the dock, and he'd go on the dock and he's admiring the water. So they sort of got used to it. And he started taking out the stone and admiring it, putting it away, taking out the stone and admiring it. So they got used to that. And then one day, as he's on the dock and admiring the stone, oops, it slipped. And it fell into the ocean. Well, there went that stone. There went that fortune. Oh my gosh, they all felt horrible, but obviously he was totally innocent. I mean, he wasn't throwing this astronomical stone in the ocean. And obviously what can we do? All right, got to go back home. And obviously you don't earn any money. And what a pity. Yes, what a pity. Yes, what a pity. Yes, what a pity. And that's what he did, which means, again, just try to envision this in modern terms, how much money he just literally threw into the ocean to avoid having a stone that he owned through him, even though he had no choice, becoming part of a statue in the Vatican. God said, you gave up this most precious gem. That was so luminous, you know, it shone with such light. I'm going to give you such a gem whose light will shine and illuminate all the eyes of the Jewish people. And then in their very old age, for the first time, they were actually gifted with a child. And that child grew up to be Rashi, Rav Shlomo Yitzchaki. As I said, for sure, I'm not am I to reckon, but if we're talking about commentators on Torah, probably among the top 3, maybe the top 2, maybe the top greatest, or sharing the throne with maybe one other person in terms of truly someone who illuminated all of Torah, all of the 5 books, and all of Talmud through his light. It's a very, very powerful story. And again, was he required to do what he did? No. Obviously, if he had a choice, if it was today in America and he had a choice, well, who knows what would be the laws. Sometimes there's funny laws. But assuming he could get away with it, of course, the answer is no. Of course, you would never sell something like that. But you don't have a choice. You don't have a choice. And literally in those days, he had no choice. And to go as far as he did and create this whole scheme, and again, to look so innocent, not even for his own life, but that no Jew should be killed and no pogrom should be instituted because of it, and to throw away all that money and take such a risk because he didn't want to do anything that could come to be used for an idol. Nothing of his possession should then become part of an idol. And then look at God's response. Now, we said before, and we discussed this at length, I believe last week, that we are not allowed to make an image for decoration. We're not here talking about idols. Obviously, we're not making an idol. We all know that. We're not allowed to make an image for decoration that has a full frontal, proportionate head and body of a human or of an angel or of anything else that is a known idol. Even though you're not using it as an idol, you're using it for decoration. You're not allowed to make them. You should not have them. But if it happens to be that you're in a situation where they're part of something you own and you're going to benefit from them, you're allowed to, because again, you didn't make them, you didn't commission them, you don't want them. Like, for example, if you owned a house, somehow you inherited a house that had these statues with people or angels on them, carved out, proportionate, three-dimensional, full frontal head and body. Well, if you sell the house is more valuable because of those statues. Are you allowed to do that? Or do you have an obligation to destroy those statues before you sell the house? No, you're allowed to sell the house with those statues and the house will be worth more money. You're allowed to have that money. It's not forbidden. Again, understand why. These statues were never used as an idol. They were never meant to be used as an idol. They are purely decorative pillars. Very fancy decorative pillars of a very fancy house. And since you happen to come across it, like it came into your lap, you are allowed to sell it as part of this whole house and make more money because of that. And you have no obligation to destroy them. Are you allowed to make them? No. Are you allowed to buy them? No. But since they're not idols, since they came into your possession, you are allowed to, as we're calling it, benefit from them by a more lucrative sale because of the value of these statues, which is enhancing the value of the property. But that's only if they're not idols. If they're idols, if you had a similar situation and somehow someone gifted you with a house that has these statues that were used as idols and you know they were used as idols, no, you are not allowed to sell it and make more money because of the idols or just sell it irrelevant. You must destroy them. Well, if I destroy them, it's going to harm. It doesn't make a difference. They were used as idols, you must destroy them. But if they were not used as idols, they were never intended to be used as idols. They're only statues, which we're not allowed to make and which we're not allowed to own. But they're only statues, then you're allowed to have benefit from them. Sometimes you could say, well, how in the world am I supposed to know if this statue was worshipped or not? I don't know its history. Maybe it's 100 years old. Maybe the house had 3 owners. Yes, the owner that had it before me, I mean, they're not religious at all. They definitely weren't worshiping it. But how am I supposed to know if it was ever worshipped? And if it was ever worshipped, it's an idol. What am I supposed to do about that? So that's a great question. So the answer is, it depends where it's found. Meaning, if this house with these statues is in a village or a town where people generally or historically worshipped these statues, and 100 years ago, everyone made them and everyone was worshiping them, and this house is 100 years old, then historically, you would assume they were worshipped. They haven't been worshipped for 100 years. It doesn't make a difference. Once it's an idol until you destroy it. So at that point, the fact that the previous owner totally didn't worship it is not relevant. Historically, based on its geography, based on the culture, based on the level of observance, totally has to be destroyed. Conversely, if these statues in this house that you happen to inherit or won in a lottery, whatever, they're in a town where nobody worships these things. Nobody ever worshipped these things. It's totally secular town and it was never worshipped. And yeah, it's fancy homes, they have statues. So then you can assume that these were never worshipped and they're just decorative and you can leave them there and sell them and make more money. So you have to do a little bit of research. If something like this came into your ballpark, is this a place where people worship these types of statues? Is this a place where historically they didn't? They didn't? Fine, view them as statues. They did, even though you can't prove it, you have to view them as idols.
So what about the fact that when people buy antiques and you don't know for sure, but there's a good chance that they were worshipped?
So you
And
can't
these-
buy something like that. Absolutely. If you know that again, this type of object was used for worship, even though you don't know that this one was, then you don't buy them.
Oh, but what happens if you've bought a house that has this antique in it and it was included in, like you're talking about, was included in the sale of the
Right.
house.
So if you
So you're
bought,
gonna get this.
you bought something that's still intact, meaning if it was sort of broken up, like a smashed plate or something that you could say, oh, well, it's destroyed, you could assume the owner nullified it because if they viewed it as an idol, they wouldn't have broken it. But if it's intact and it's something that historically was used for worship, then you should assume it was used for worship. You should assume it's an idol. And if you now are the owner of it because it came with the house, it wasn't like, in other words, if you bought a house and you were cleaning out the attic and you found some things there, I don't know if you're literally considered the owner unless in the bill of sale it said including all the contents. But if it didn't say including all the contents, you clearly, it's in your possession and you clearly destroy it, but you don't have the ability to nullify it because it's not, you don't own it. But if you bought the house and they deliberately left, they left some things here, they said all of this is yours, whatever is found in the house, you are the owner of. Well, now you're the owner of it. So as the owner of it, you can nullify it. And once you nullify it, if there's any benefit left to it, meaning if it was something of a precious metal that it actually has benefit after it's destroyed, you can sell it and benefit from it. No problem. You're the owner and you nullified it. But if you found in a back closet something that they clearly just forgot, you have an obligation to destroy it, but you're not the owner of it, so you can't nullify it.
Well, no, that's not quite, I understand that part. But what I'm asking about is like, an antiquity of that has come from thousands of years ago that happened to be left. And this is it would be very, well, how would I say it? It would be illegal in a sense to destroy it because it's an antiquity. I cannot pronounce it right.
I know exactly what you're saying. Yes, then if this is something that in ancient times was worshipped, your obligation is to destroy it. And if it is a tremendous financial loss, you should think of the story of Rashi's father and feel you and Rashi's father are in the same literal boat. And how fortunate are you that God gave you this ability?
Even though you could be arrested and jailed for doing that.
Yes, because hopefully nobody's ever going to know about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't first put pictures in the paper and then destroy it. Just destroy it, covert. Nobody's going to ever know about it. Yes, like for example, let's say where you live in Colorado, there's ancient Indian idols, that could be found somewhere in some cave. Yeah. And maybe they're considered having historical significance. Well, they're clearly idols that the Indians worship. What do? You destroy it. Again, can you nullify it? You can't nullify it. You're not the owner of it. Can you destroy it? You absolutely can destroy it, and you're supposed to destroy it.
Okay. Gotcha. Thank you.
Sure. So again, if you found something like I just mentioned, which might or might not be relevant in Colorado, I don't know what's going on in Colorado with the Indians, if you find some cave and you find some images, if you conversely found an image in a garbage, not destroyed, but in a garbage, then you would assume they're nullified. Nullified meaning if somebody owned this idol and put it in the garbage, that means they don't view it as an idol. That means they don't care about it. That means they're saying it's garbage. So that means the owner nullified it. It now has benefit because you can pull it out of the garbage and do something with it. Great, go for it. Someone put something in the garbage, they nullified it. They didn't know the term nullification. They don't know any of these laws. It doesn't make a difference. When you put in the garbage, you view as garbage. So if you find in the garbage dump, if you find in garbage, if you find in the waste scraps, people go, I forget the term for it, but they go into garbages and look for things. So if you're going garbage shopping and you find in the garbage something that was clearly an idol, it's clearly viewed as nullified. Because if the person valued it and viewed it as an idol, they wouldn't put it in the garbage. So the owner nullified it. It has any benefit for you, go for it. Don't worry about it. If you found in scattered pieces of an idol, if you found an idol with all its scattered broken pieces, it was clearly nullified. Someone clearly destroyed it. Again, if they knew the term nullification, it doesn't make a difference. They clearly don't view this as an idol if they're breaking it up into pieces and the pieces are all scattered. But now here there's actually a little bit of a differentiation. If you happen to find an arm of an idol flying around somewhere, well, it's clearly nullified. Obviously it was smashed and obviously its pieces were scattered. If you find near the base of the idol, near the pedestal of the idol, parts of the idol, we say we're not sure, and it could still be viewed as something they would worship. Meaning, in some forms of worship, even pieces of an idol are worshiped. So if it's near the place of worship, near the sanctuary, near the pedestal, near the base, near where it's worshiped, we don't say, oh yeah, well, that's just an arm, that's just a finger, that's just a toe, that was for sure made nullified. No. Maybe they were worshiping that toe. Maybe they were worshiping that finger. We don't know. So we still view it as suspect. We still view it as an idol. But if you found it scattered all over the place, nowhere near where the worshiping place is, then we say, well, clearly they didn't value it anymore because its parts are scattered and clearly they're not worshiping it. And then it is nullified. Exactly, perhaps Dixie's question, but sort of going in this direction. Let's say you find certain items, a gold vessel, a silver vessel, silk cloth, on the vessels, embedded, engraved in the gold or silver vessels or on the silk cloths is a figure of something idolatrous, a dragon that was worshipped, the sun or the moon or the constellations, any of the Christian symbols, something that's clearly an idolatrous. You find it engraved on a ring, a nose ring, a regular ring. These items, gold vessels, silver vessels, silk cloths, nose rings, regular rings, these items were considered significant. And therefore, when we find these idolatrous images imprinted or engraved on these items, we view them that they were used for idol worship. And therefore, we cannot benefit from them. We don't know their back history. I find it in Chicago. I have no clue if this was historically a place where they worship dragons. It doesn't make a difference. If this is an idolatrous form and it's on something that's valuable, that means someone cared enough to take something gold and engrave in it, carve in it, imprint in it, this form of an idol. It's too likely that it was used for idolatrous service or worship. If it wasn't, but I can't take a chance because idolatry is so dangerous. I don't know its history, doesn't make a difference. If an idolatrous image, now again, what the point here is to understand, this is not a three-dimensional idol. Generally, when we're looking at things that are idols, we view it as something three-dimensional. Like I said before, the cross was three-dimensional, the statues are three-dimensional. Here we're talking about something that's two-dimensional. It's a picture, in a sense. It's not three-dimensional. But because this even two-dimensional picture is on something valuable like gold or silver or silk, it's viewed that this is important to the person. The person was using in some form of idol worship. Again, maybe the person is the original person and it's been 4 hands ago, it was 100 years ago, 200 years ago. It doesn't make a difference. Once an idol, always an idol. The status of being an idol is never removed unless the owner nullified it or it's destroyed.
You're saying a picture from your childhood of would be something that would have to be destroyed?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. Now, again, someone might decide to destroy it because they don't want that relationship. They don't want that connection, but that's a personal choice. I'm saying very specifically, something on gold, not a picture of a golden plate, the golden plate, something on gold, something on silver, something on silk, something on a nose ring, something on a regular ring.
Okay,
Those are the 5 specific items that are listed as things that were important and were used, were things that people did as part of idolatrous service.
And they had a value.
Exactly.
That's the
They're
key.
considered,
They
they
had
were
a value.
valuable. And that's why we're saying this golden plate, this silver plate, and then they engraved in it this thing, it was probably part of service. On some level, it was used for service. But no, if you have a photograph of you in some place in Europe and there's a church in the background, you don't have an obligation to cut that off. You might choose to. You might say, I don't want to have anything in my house that has anything to do with that. And it's evil and it's energy, and I don't want that energy in my house. And that makes a lot of sense. But from the letter of the law, you don't have that obligation. But if you have, and again, you don't know its history, like going back to Dixie's question, you find it in an antique store and it's such a bargain. And they don't even realize, they think it's copper. You know it's real gold. This actually happened to a friend of mine. She was in one of these like thrift shops, and not exactly the type at this point happened. She was in a thrift shop and they had like a bunch of jewelry, like, I don't know, 10 pieces for $1. I don't know, whatever, $1 a piece, like, thrift shop. And she's looking through the jewelry and she realizes they're real gold. She realized it was real gold. Obviously they probably just got it from some, I don't know, estate sale or something, and they had no clue, and they just viewed it as junk. But this junk was real gold. And she looked through every single piece of jewelry and she found the whole collection, all of which was absolute gold. And they didn't realize. She said very, very ugly pieces, but she just melted them all down because it was gold. So if you're in a thrift shop and you see this golden plate and it's such a bargain, they don't even realize it's gold, you realize it's gold, or they don't realize it's worth, you realize it's worth, it's a tremendous bargain. You would buy it and then sell it. If you see engraved in there is an idolatrous form, a form that was worshipped, like the sun is a traditional thing that was worshipped. The moon, the constellations, the dragons, any forms of idols that you know of, it's forbidden. It's absolutely forbidden. We have to view it that it was used as an idol at some point, maybe 100 years ago, but it was used as an idol, and therefore we cannot buy it to resell it or do anything else with it.
Even to melt it down?
Even to melt it down, right. We said you don't buy an idol to destroy it.
Okay.
If it was not a valuable thing, if it was like a pottery, and then you would see like on the pottery a picture of a sun, we don't view that as an idol. We say, nah, it's cheap. It was pottery. It was just there for decoration. So unless you know that in this area of the country, they use these potteries for idolatrous worship, and therefore obviously you can't. But if you did, no, I never heard of that. It's a cheap thing. It wasn't like something important. Okay, it was probably a decoration. We could view it as a decoration and have no issues with it.
Daryl, I have a question for you.
Sure.
What about tattoos and such?
So again, that's sort of the same idea. A tattoo is flat. It's not three-dimensional. If the tattoo was part of a service, if it was part of some type of worship, if the person used it in their previous lifetime as part of worship, then it has to be removed. If it was never used as worship, it's just decoration. It would depend again what the tattoo is. If the tattoo is, let's go back to what we were talking about before, about the two types of crosses. If the tattoo was a cross with a man on it, that would be much more a problem. If it was a cross without a man on it, and it was never worshipped, it was just some cool decoration, it's up to the person. They don't have to. They say, oh, it's so painful to remove it. They just don't want to go there. It's covered. Nobody sees it. They don't have to. Again, you might say, well, who would want that on their body? True. Just like I said to Dixie about the pictures. You want to have such pictures in your house, but it's so sentimental. It reminds me of my youth and this and that. It's precious to me. Okay, if you want to, you can have it. Maybe double wrap it so its energy shouldn't go anywhere. But you don't have to destroy it because there was no worship done with that picture. So if there was no worship done with a tattoo and the tattoo is not an idol, it could stay. If it is an idol, it should be removed.
Thank you.
Sure. Now, again, going back to what I'm saying here about the gold, silver, silk, rings versus the pottery, with the discrimination we're making is something that's more expensive. If engraved in this is a picture of a known idol, or like we're saying, like the sun, which historically was definitely one of the top idols of the world, we have to view it as an idol. And again, if it's in your possession, you can nullify it. If it's not in your possession, but you have the ability to destroy it, you destroy it. If it's something cheap material, like we said, pottery that has the picture of the sun on it, we say, no, it's probably just decoration. People thought it was pretty. That's only in a situation when we don't know its history. We have no clue. We just see it. You're antiquing. You see it. Pottery with a picture of a sun on it, cheap material. I'm saying you don't have to view it as an idol. But if you know it was worshipped as an idol, or you know it was part of the service of the idol, they would put water in it and they would put the water by the idol and whatever they did, then 100% is viewed as an auxiliary to an idol. 100% has to be destroyed if you have the ability to destroy it, nullified if it's in your possession. And I'm saying, like, let's go to some ancient Indian artifacts, articles. Yes, these were all objects that were probably used in idolatrous service. So if you're the owner, nullify it. If you're not the owner, destroy it. If you can. Again, we're not saying the point isn't, well, but it's cheap. It's copper. It's pottery. It's cheap, but it was served for an idol, then it has to be destroyed. Our only question was, we don't know its back history. We have nothing that proves it was or it wasn't, nothing about it, but I do see this is what's engraved in it. Was it decoration? Was it an idol? I don't know. So if it was something valuable, like the gold, the silver, the silk, the rings, they're valuable. So it was probably given importance, idolatry, something cheaper. It wasn't given importance, not idolatry. You know it's idolatry, well, then it's viewed as an idol. If you can destroy it, destroy it. If it's in your possession, nullify it. We're going to stop here. I would like to at least share one idea of Chanuka. So when we're talking about Chanuka, I actually sent out yesterday sort of like a overview on 8 thoughts for the 8 nights, but you only have to read like 1 paragraph a night. And there's absolutely no obligation for a Noahide to do anything for Chanuka. It's not one of the 7 laws of Noah to do anything for Chanuka. You have no obligation to do anything for Chanuka. At the same time, this time of year, since obviously you are not allowed to do what everybody else around you is doing, it's hard to sometimes just do nothing. And it sort of feels like depressing. So that's why definitely, this is the energy of the time. And you can embrace the energy of Chanuka in whatever way you want. Whatever way you want. You want to eat jelly donuts and latkes, potato pancakes. You want whatever you're doing that's part of embracing the energy. Just gonna look at the first thought that I shared from these ideas, just to one Chanuka thought. And this is the thought of the first night, which is tonight. So the first night of Chanuka, how the menorah works, if you have no familiarity with it at all, is there's 8 lights for the 8 nights. And there's an additional 1 light that might be built into the menorah, might be separate, which is called the shamash, which means to serve, because it's not really part of the commandment of the menorah. It serves the other by lighting it. And every night you add a light. So the first night we put 1, the second night we're going to do 2, the third night we're going to do 3, until the 8th night when the whole menorah is lit. So tonight we lit 1 candle, or ideally, even better than candle, oil. So 1 flask of pure olive oil was lit in many, many, many homes across the world tonight. What do we see from that in our own thoughts? What we can learn from this is, and what we can apply to our own lives is, the power of a single candle to dispel darkness. We're only lighting 1 candle. The rest of the menorah is not lit. It's just 1 little flame. But that 1 little flame is a light that dispels a lot of darkness. And that's really a message to us, because sometimes in our own world, we can feel small. Sometimes we're overwhelmed by a lot of darkness all around us. Sometimes there's a lot of negativity all around us. Some of you are fortunate and you're with spouses and with children that are really supportive, if not on the exact same page. And for some of you, of course, it's very, very, very different. And you can feel very small. You can feel very overwhelmed by a lot of negative energy. So we have to remember, we're all like that 1 little flame. Even 1 little flame dispels a lot of darkness. What does that mean? A little act of goodness, a little act of kindness, serving God. And we can't think, oh, I'm not so accomplished. I don't know so much. I'm small. Great. You're the little flame. You're small. We get it. You're small. But your small act of prayer to God, your small act of saying a chapter of Psalm, your small act of charity. Of course, we focus so many times about charity and tithing and how important that is. Your small act of charity or big act of charity. Your small act of dressing more modestly. Your small act of abstaining from foods that probably were not slaughtered appropriately. Even though you might feel like there's so much darkness around you, and what difference does it make if I'm not going to this fast food place and eating their meat? If I'm wearing something that covers my collarbone or something that covers my knees, if I'm choosing not to gossip, but being honest when it's so difficult, what difference does it make? The world around me is so dark, or the people around me are in such darkness. It makes a tremendous difference. You're that one flame, and that one little flame will dispel the darkness. So that is a message from tonight, from the Chanuka menorah of tonight. And again, you can
Where
definitely
did you send,
what?
where did you send it to?
I put it on our WhatsApp group. Dixie, are you on? You're on the WhatsApp group, no?
Yeah, I thought so. I send you WhatsApp, or do I'm not in the group.
Is Dixie
Dixie,
Danielle?
I also put it on the Facebook, on our Facebook page as well. I posted it there as well.
Okay.
I can send it to you directly if that's helpful.
Yeah,
If
that'd be
someone
good.
didn't get it and would like to, if you've Danielle has your contact, or you could reach out to me.
Yeah.
And I would definitely, it's just like a thought a night for the 8 nights, each night to try to take something from the energy of this very special time, this very miraculous time. We obviously don't have time now for it, but it's a wonderful thing to Hanukkah in general, to focus on the miracles. Focus on the miracles you've experienced, focused on the miracles you personally have seen in your life or the lives of people close to you. And just know that God does miracles, and Hanukkah is testimony to God, comes through for us, does miracles, continues to do miracles, in our time does miracles. And I hope that every one of us has experienced God's miracles and aware that there's God's miracles. And Hanukkah is a very wonderful time to reflect on those miracles, to remind ourselves of those miracles, and to have confidence and trust that the miracles will continue to flow.
Amen.
So have a joyous, luminous week ahead of us. A joyous, luminous week. And Hanukkah. Exactly. Looking forward to seeing you next week. Be well.
Thank you.
Hanukkah. Hanukkah.
Yeah.